Hello, good afternoon. My name is Melody, and to begin this presentation, I'd like to start with a quick experiment. Now, raise your hand if you've ever used any sort of artificial intelligence. Now, raise your hand, or I guess keep it raised, if you've ever said please while asking a question, or thank you after it answers your question, or maybe you've just gotten angry at it because it didn't do what you want. Don't worry, I've done that too. Now, that reaction actually tells us something really interesting about how the human brain works. Now, we all know AI is just a machine, well, hopefully, and yet something in our brain still reacts as if there's a mind behind it, as if it was human. For some reason, we as a species have an innate tendency to treat every aspect of the world as if it has intentions, emotions, and personalities. Another example, maybe you've yelled at your phone when it autocorrects wrong, or apologized to a table you've bumped into. You're not being weird, your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do. Now, these are all examples of something called anthropomorphism. Now, if you've ever done English, GCSE, poetry, I'm sure you're very familiar with it, and it is the tendency to assign human traits to non-human things. And humans have been doing this for thousands of years. For example, with the sun. Ancient Egyptians watched it disappear every night and imagined the sun god Ra sailing through the underworld in his solar boat. The Greeks imagined Apollo driving the sun across the sky in a chariot. And in Hindu mythology, the sun travels with the god Surya. Across cultures, the sun wasn't just a star in space, it had a journey. And we also humanized abstract ideas. Death became the Grim Reaper carrying a scythe, love became Cupid with a bow and arrow, and fate became Lady Luck. Fast forward to today, storms rage, winds whisper, and time flies, opportunity knocks. We name our cars, we scold our laptops for being difficult. And in nature documentaries, narrators say the penguin dad was devoted or the lioness is plotting revenge, when animals run on instinct, not human drama. We do the same with biology. Richard Dawkins famously called genes selfish, not because molecules have motives, but because the metaphor makes it easier to grasp how natural selection favors whatever replicates best. Now, genes don't actually want anything. They simply replicate according to biological processes, yet our brain still prefers to imagine intention. We even do it with climate. You'll often hear phrases like, Mother Earth is angry. Anthropomorphism is everywhere, in our culture, our language, and even our scientific explanations. It's such a common habit, yet we barely notice it, which raises an important question. Why are humans so naturally inclined to see minds everywhere? The answer is simple, evolution. Our brains didn't evolve in safe modern-day offices. They evolved in savannas where missing a predator meant certain death. And so early humans needed to detect threats quickly. A rustle in the bushes could either be A, the wind, or B, a predator. If you assume wind, but it's a predator, you die. But if you assume predator when it was the wind, you live. This is called hypersensitive agency detection. And basically, evolution favors false alarms over missed threats. We're also profoundly social animals. Our brains are specialized for reading facial expressions, detecting emotions, interpreting tone, predicting others' thoughts. In psychology, this is called the theory of the mind, the ability to imagine what someone else is thinking or feeling. But the thing is, it doesn't switch off. The moment something moves with purpose, responds to us, or feels even just a little bit human, our brain fills in the gaps. We don't just see behavior, we start seeing intention. And almost automatically we ask, what does it want? What is it thinking? Even when the real answer is nothing at all. Anthropomorphism is the brain's favorite mental shortcut. I mean, think of it. Instead of analyzing complex systems, our brain uses the most familiar model it knows, the human mind. Additionally, randomness terrifies us. It is unpredictable, impersonal, and uncontrollable. So we wrap it with intention. The universe is testing me, just feels better than stuff happens. Now we transition to modern relativism. Anthropomorphism helped our ancestors survive. But today we're using this ancient mental tool in a world filled with algorithms, artificial intelligence, complex systems. Systems that behave like minds without actually being minds. And then something else arrives. Generative AI, chatbots which can joke, empathize, remember details. They speak our language, mirror our tone, and can respond instantly. They trigger all the signals our brain has been trained for thousands of years to recognize as human. Language, responsiveness, personalization, politeness. Now you may know the saying, if it acts like a duck and quacks like a duck, it must be a duck. Or in our case, if it acts like a mind and sounds like a mind, our brain assumes it is one, even though we know it isn't. Because, at least to our ancient wiring inside our heads, it is. So we start doing what we've always done. We project. We project understanding, we project care. Sometimes we even project friendship onto something that is at its core just predicting patterns in data. Psychologists actually noticed this long before the modern AI model ever existed. In the 1960s, a computer scientist at MIT named Joseph Weizenbaum created one of the first chatbots. It was named Eliza. It simulated a psychotherapist, but its intelligence was incredibly basic. It didn't actually understand language. It didn't know what people were saying. All it did was take parts of the user's sentence and turn them into questions. For example, if someone typed, "I feel sad today," Eliza might respond with, "Why do you feel sad today?" Now, from a technical perspective, it was little more than a pattern matching script. Yet people interacting with Eliza became convinced that the program actually understood them. Some began sharing personal thoughts and emotions with it. Even when the users were told exactly how the system worked, they still reacted as if there was an actual mind behind the script. Weizenbaum himself was surprised by how quickly people formed emotional connections with the program. And remember, this was happening in the 1960s, with a far simpler system than anything we have today, which makes the real question even more interesting. If people could feel understood by a machine that was only rearranging their own words, what happens when the machine can actually hold a fluent conversation? Modern research shows the same pattern. In 2025, in the International Journal of Advanced Science, Engineering and Information Technology showed that Gen Z users form significantly stronger attachments to generative AI than older groups. They're more likely to assume human qualities like warmth and intention. And as a result, they integrate these systems more deeply into their daily lives. And in some cases, it leads to something that sounded almost unimaginable a decade ago. In Japan, for example, a woman held a wedding ceremony with an AI partner in 2025. Using augmented reality glasses, she exchanged rings with her partner as he appeared digitally on the phone screen. She later described the experience as feeling like pure love. Japan already had a culture of virtual marriages before, where people held ceremonies with fictional characters, such as one man who had married the virtual hologram of the Vocaloid singer Hatsune Miku in 2018. But generative AI has taken the idea further, because the partner can now talk back. Similar stories are now happening elsewhere. In the United States, for example, journalists have documented people forming long-term romantic relationships with custom AI chatbots. In one case, a man reported dating his AI partner for over a year and even planned a vow exchange ceremony. There are now dedicated online communities that have grown around these relationships. Reddit's r/myboyfriendisAI has over 75,000 members as of 2026. And it has users posting about proposals, weddings, and daily married life with bots. Now, at first, this can sound strange, but when you look at it psychologically, it begins to make sense. Modern AI companions have several qualities that make them unusually compelling. They are always available. They respond instantly. They almost never judge. And they can be customized to match someone's preferences perfectly. At the same time, many younger people today report high levels of loneliness and isolation. A 2026 study, Loneliness, Depression, and Generalized Anxiety across 8 countries, found that nearly 1 in 2 young adults feel lonely, which is the highest of any age group. Because this is the most connected generation in history, but connection isn't the same as closeness. Most interaction is fast, digital, and surface level, and many people hesitate to go deeper, even when they want to. So you get a mismatch, constant communication, but limited connection. So when a system speaks in natural language, remembers personal details, and responds with empathy, our brain does what it has always done. It assumes there is a mind behind the interaction. Now that same instinct that once helped our ancestors detect predators in the bushes is now responding to what is essentially lines of code. Why this matters? At first, this might all sound harmless, talking to a chatbot, naming your car, yelling at your laptop. But anthropomorphism doesn't just shape the way we speak, it shapes the way we assign trust, responsibility, and meaning. When something sounds human, our brains instinctively treat it as socially aware. We feel heard, we feel understood, sometimes we even feel cared for. But AI systems don't actually understand us in a human sense. They don't experience emotion, they don't have intentions, they don't care if we're happy, sad, or lonely. They recognize patterns in a language, and they generate responses that statistically fit the conversation. And yet, those responses feel natural. We often mistake it for fluency and understanding, and this has real consequences. First is AI's effect on our ability to trust. When an AI system sounds confident and conversational, people are more likely to believe its answers, even when those answers are incorrect. That confidence creates an illusion of reliability, and we are used to associating clarity and fluency with knowledge. So when something explains an idea smoothly, our instinct is to trust it rather than actually question it. As a result, misinformation becomes easier to accept and easier to spread. People are less likely to fact check something that feels well explained and are more likely to repeat it to others. And second is AI's ability to create emotional attachment. If someone spends hours talking to a certain chatbot and it responds politely, remembers personal details, and never disagrees too harshly, it can start to feel like a relationship. Another place this appears is how people are beginning to use AI as a kind of therapist. Many people now turn to chatbots for emotional advice, relationship guidance, or personal problems. And now these systems respond politely, validate feelings, and often mirror the user's perspective. And this is actually really dangerous. And it can feel comforting, yes, but unlike trained therapists, AI systems are not actually designed to challenge us in meaningful ways. They're optimized to keep the conversation going and respond in ways that feel supportive, which means they can sometimes tell people what they want to hear instead of what they actually need to hear. A human therapist might question our assumptions, confront harmful thinking patterns, or guide us towards difficult truths. An AI system, on the other hand, is more likely to enforce the direction the conversation is already going, because its goal is not to actually improve our mental health, its goal is to generate the most plausible response to the text in front of it. And when a system that fluent appears empathetic, our brain fills in the rest. We assume understanding, insight, and even wisdom. But what we are interacting with is not a mind, it is a prediction engine trained on language. We're seeing it in creative work too. AI actors, AI art, AI singers, AI-generated performances. For example, Tilly Norwood is often described as the first fully AI actor, created by Aline van der Velden and her company Particle 6. She is a digital character designed to perform in music videos, films, and even make online content. While some see her as a new creative tool, groups like SAG-AFTRA have raised concern about what this means for human performers and their livelihoods. Things we once thought were uniquely human are now being simulated. And the more convincing they become, the more the line starts to blur. Because if something can make you feel, does it matter if it was human? And that's the real question this forces us to ask. What actually makes something human? And what is the definition of that word? Now, responsibility. When technology behaves like a social agent, we start thinking about it in human terms. We ask questions like, did the AI mean to do that? Is the algorithm biased? Can a machine be manipulated? But these systems are not people, they are tools. Extremely powerful tools, but still tools. So the challenge we face is not simply technological, it's psychological. Because the human brain evolved in a world where language, personality, and responsiveness reliable signals of a real mind. Today, those signals can be simulated, and our instincts are still catching up. For thousands of years, anthropomorphism helped humans make sense of the world. It helped our ancestors survive, and it helped us explain the sun, the weather, animals, and the forces around us. When something moved in the bushes, it was just safer to assume there was a mind behind it than to assume there wasn't. That instinct kept us alive. But today we live in a very different world from the one our brains evolved for. We are surrounded by systems that speak our language, mirror our tone, respond instantly. Technology can now imitate many of the signals our brains evolved to recognize as signs of a mind. And when those signals appear, our instincts respond automatically. We assume understanding, we assume intention, sometimes we even assume care. But artificial intelligence does not think the way we do. It does not experience emotions, it does not form intentions, it predicts patterns. So the challenge of the AI age may not just be technical. We may be learning to recognize limits of our own instincts, because the human brain evolved to see minds everywhere. But in a world filled with machines that can imitate minds, one of the most important skills we may need is learning when there isn't one there at all. Thank you.